in danger, and her brother had actually been forced to flee the country.
Tanzania.
The other thing is, of course, around the same time, of course, when the fault lines within the commission finally emerged, and we started saying that the commission was divided down the middle. Of course, there was that sense, and when they started issuing out the contradictory statements, there was that feeling that the divisions within the commission, and people started seeing Akombe as being on one side of that particular division. I think these are issues the media has tried to bring out. What I think we did not anticipate or see is actually her journey coming to this particular point. And I think that, like we have noticed after the elections were nullified, we have seen her reduce her media presence in terms of the appearances and being there to speak on behalf of the commission. Until this week, when we started seeing her, of course, talking about preparations, and a few high media engagements has significantly reduced in the recent past. But looking at it, of course, we have to remember she has been under significant, just like any commissioner, they'll be under tremendous pressure. And it was only a matter of time. But I have to, of course, say that this is worrying because so close to the elections, when you take up an IEBC job, you actually understand the pressure. We know what happened to the previous commissioners and even the commission before then. So you understand it's not an easy job. And therefore, at times, I think you may want to consider and weigh very well. Because I remember I once asked her, were you ready for this? Did you actually know what you were walking into? She said she had an idea, but she didn't understand the intrigues and the pressure that she was likely to face, in executing her mandate. Mm-hmm. So I would say, in a sense, the media has tried to, of course, focus on the issues that are happening within IEBC. And, of course, even the political developments have actually made us focus and look at IEBC. But in terms of questioning preparedness, in terms of questioning IEBC's capacity, in terms of looking at the issues that the political players have raised, for example, NASA's reducible minimum, I know we have covered that extensively, but in terms of breaking down to see what is actually achievable and to see what the commission has done and comparing between what the commission has done, the NASA's reducible minimums, and looking at if there are certain, for example, the commission at times has said we are unable to do this or that. The media, of course, would try to look and interrogate these issues to see whether actually it is consistent, checking whether is there somebody who is being economical with the truth or exactly not bring out the issues that exactly they stand.
All right, Eric, where do we pick this story and how do we develop this now?
I think the story is that we still need to interrogate the statement that was the resignation letter by Akombe. We still have, of course, you've had a very long interview with her, but I think the media still needs to interview her further so that at least some of the issues that she is, because right now she can't help with this country. She's, I think, is not helping this country if she just make a blanket statement that we have commissioners actually who go into a plenary already ready to vote without even having to debate the issues that they are voting on. She needs to tell us that during my time, these are the commissioners I'm talking about. These are the commissioners who are actually taking partisan positions. She said that the chairman is under siege, and I think she needs to tell us, if the chairman is under siege, what is exactly happening in the commission? Who are these commissioners who are frustrating the chairman? The commissioners are also getting instructions elsewhere. Who are these people? She needs now to tell us the names, that these are the politicians who are actually influencing the decision-making at IEBC. And I'm not surprised with her resignation. And actually, I was joking with my colleagues that right now, up to where we've reached, if the stakes are so high and there are a lot of political interest in what is happening in this country, and therefore the commissioners, we might blame the commissioners, but now we've reached a point where these commissioners cannot make independent decisions because that right now they are captives of a political class. And once commissioners have come captive of political class, then even their lives are now in danger. And given that Dr. Akombe had that opportunity, maybe because she has a dual citizenship, she could run to the U.S. What happens to other commissioners who are and I was joking with my friends that right now, if I were a commissioner, what I'll do, right now I'll be negotiating probably to get a political asylum in another country because it reached a point whereby any decision you make, it might not be independent because right now they are captives of political class. And we've seen that in the past, like Dr. Akombe has said, a senior official of IEBC was killed in a manner that actually there are a lot of questions that have been asked. So right now, actually, we shouldn't be demonizing these commissioners, but we should be finding a way how can they actually be left, how can we remove them from the hands of these politicians who are actually causing this problem. Like Dr. Ekuru has said, this is now a political decision that has been made by leaders. Only that I was surprised and disappointed that Dr. Akot is still telling us that he is waiting for the IEBC chairman to pronounce himself in this particular issue. Yet he wants to be a leader. He wants to be the president of this country. He should be telling us that as a political leader, somebody who aspires to be the president of this country, this is what I want happen. Otherwise, we should not have election. But if you're going to have elections for the sake of it, then we are setting a very bad precedent. We should have election that must be seen to be free, fair, and credible.
Dr. Kamau, we only have 7 days to go before the election. And like you've mentioned, there are certain things maybe that we may have left out in terms of giving a very clear picture where we are today. Where do we pick this up from, and what is it that we need to now be focusing on?
There are several things that are very important. The first one, and I think you tried to clarify earlier, legally, what does it mean? Can the commission still continue operating? Is it still legally constituted with the resignation of Dr. Akombe? At least I think that is an issue that has been clarified. Yes, the commission can still go ahead and operate. But I said her statement raised some very specific issues that I think the media needs to probe in terms of the partisan divisions within the commissioners and also the secretariat. What are these interests that they are championing? The other thing, of course, she has indicated that the chairman is under pressure. And I have to say, this is my personal opinion. When I look at Chebukati, he always appears like a man who is committed and willing to do the right thing. But there is a sense in which he also seems to be wavering. You know, and I think she alluded to that at times he tends to respond too much to the external pressure, in a sense that we are not able to see him taking leadership and guiding the commission forward. So we may actually want to understand what are these political pressures. And of course, other people are, trying to, even Dr. Okuru suggested that maybe the chairman could be under pressure to resign, and it has implications. So I think the media may also want to paint these scenarios for us in case there is resignation. For example, the only challenge would be, and the commission will not be able to function if 2 more commissioners resign. And what does that mean? And especially when you consider the process of appointing new commissioners, what does it mean for the 26th election? The other thing, a very important question, she had actually left the country on an IBC mission to supervise the printing of ballot paper. So what happens? Who is supervising? Was she with other staff? And who will now, of course, provide an update on those things? But I think the most important thing from the point of the media, and I think this has been a major failing, I think I need to point out this. I know, for example, last week's withdrawal by the NASA candidate and the ruling by Justice Mativo the following day, there was general confusion among the public. And I think the media, in trying to help us understand and appreciate these issues, of course you bring the lawyers, but you see some of these lawyers who are openly either working within the presidential campaigns or they are partisan, they will only interpret the law pulling from their side. In a sense, then the opportunity for Wanjiko to be educated and know exactly what is happening, I think this has been my frustration. I also have to give you a specific example, again relating to that, where, because in the mind of the ordinary person, and I have to tell you, on Sunday I had a close engagement with my cousin who is 18 years, but she's very interested in what is happening and she's informed. So the general public is interested in knowing, and the media has a golden opportunity to provide that education, of course, through the coverage. But when in the answering important questions or political questions or legal questions of the day, when we are only getting views from lawyers who are known to be politically aligned, what they are giving is not exactly a proper legal education analysis.
Actually, Rosalind Akombe even mentions this here and says the advice given to them is skewed.
Exactly. It is political. It's meant to achieve certain aims. But you have to remember, the media has a cardinal opportunity, of course, to facilitate debate, but also help us understand the issues. It's an opportunity for public education.
And I'll come back to you. I want to release KTN home. And one of the questions that we had asked today, and I want you to think about it, is whether we're at a point where even media houses should openly declare their political alignment, if at all, or journalists. And we'll come to that because, again, it filters down to lawyers, it filters to the panel that you have and all that. But for now, we'd like to release KTN home for Life and Style to begin. It is 4 minutes to 8, but on KTN News, we want to now cross over to Patrick Abimo, who is at the IEBC headquarters. That's Anniversary Towers, and we're crossing over there. But for KTN Home, we say goodbye. For those of us who are on KTN Home and would like to catch up with what's happening at the IEBC headquarters, and that's at Anniversary Towers with Patrick Amimo, we switch over in just a minute. And I believe now we have Patrick Amimo with us. And good morning, Patrick Amimo. Of course, in the waking up to the news of Rosalind Akombe's resignation, what is the mood, the atmosphere at Anniversary Towers?
Good morning, Michael. At the anniversary tower, things are yet to pick up as it were because it's still early morning. We expect offices to be open anytime now from 8. Already, I've just asked, made some inquiries whether people have been able to see the chairperson and or the CEO of IEBC walk into their offices at anniversary towers, but it appears none has been able to spot them. So what is happening is that it's just still I think. Still early. This is now the time when we expect the staff to be reporting on duty, and maybe the early risers will have checked in early. But now this is the hour, and we expect anytime we'll be checking into the offices to see whether the chairperson is in. I tried to call the chairperson earlier when this news was breaking, just to to book an appointment or get his word. But he told me that he was to call me later, but he's not yet come back to me. But I expect now that I'm at the offices here, we'll try to see whether the chairperson is in and or the CEO, because also the CEO, Ezra Chiloba, his phone was engaged, and I think he was busy, probably given what has happened with the resignation of Commissioner Roslyn Akombe just a few hours ago, when she said that maybe the commission is under siege, and she feels that under the current circumstances the IEBC cannot conduct a credible and fair election. Remember that Akombe has been in parts of the country just prior before she left the country to Dubai, where the Al Ghurair printing firm is doing the works. She had visited parts of Western Kenya in Kisumu, just meeting with poll officials on their preparations towards the October 26th election, which is next week Thursday. And some of those staff did express their reservations and fears about the current political tensions in the country. And in her resignation statement, she said that she also fears, she's apprehensive about her staff and voters, given the rising political temperatures across the country. And she says that maybe when she brought back her report to fellow commissioners, she says some were holding extremist positions and they were not ready to look at alternatives towards this, how they can go about this particular tension in the country. And she says some were holding extreme positions and saying that the election has to go on. It's something that, though the Commission says it's ready to go to carry out the election next week Thursday, there are also some uncertainties and fears about the political environment, the tension across the country. We've seen some parts of the country, the poll officials are apprehensive. And even in Nairobi, I've got to report that in some parts, there were also fears of attack for those poll officials who are getting the training. She's also said that some of the training is being done hurriedly, and she fears that maybe the presiding officers and some of the returning officers might not get the nitty-gritty in this particular election, given that there's also something to do with the technology. There's the new technology that has been introduced, and they want to get up to speed with the technology, and they might maybe not be adequately trained to carry out a very credible election. So those are her fears, but we'll be getting to know maybe soon after these, maybe get into the office and get to know whether Wafula Chebukati is in and or Ezra Chiloba also, to share with us one or two aspects or issues with regard to these, the resignation of Roslyn Akombe, citing also maybe the current political situation, and also saying that the commission is under siege, and that also she thinks that she cannot be party to a process that will lead to that will be a mockery. She said the election will not be credible, it will be a mockery. So she feels that going as it is to hold the election next week, it will be a shambolic exercise, and it will not really produce the real results, and it will not be value for money, as it were, because we are investing about 12.5 billion shillings to IEBC, and the security agencies are going to gobble about 4.6 billion shillings in terms of the security arrangement. So we are looking at least almost 20 billion shillings being invested into this particular exercise. And this money, she fears, might not be put to good use if we continue doing the election, as it were. Michael?
All right, thank you very much, Patrick Amimo. And maybe when you get a chance, you'll speak to Kenyans on the streets and find out what their thoughts and feelings are regarding that particular resignation, and also just to get a feel. So we'll come back to you, and maybe you've managed to get one of the commissioners or the chair, Wafula Chebukati, basically to get his comments, or even the CEO, Ezra Chiloba. We'll come back to you. But for now, we'd like to cross over and speak to Senator Murkomen and find out what his take is. Good morning, Senator, and thank you for joining us this morning. morning. First of all, your comments, your opening remarks after getting the news that Rosalind Akombe has now resigned from the commission.
Thank you, Michael. I think Dr. Akombe was within her constitutional right to make a decision. She felt that it was safe and good for her, and that there is nothing. I mean, I see so many people sensationalizing her resignation. It's not something that was not expected by the Constitution and the laws. And there is no legal vacuum. Such situations were expected, not just resignation, it would also be someone would have been bankrupt or a situation where someone is indisposed. So all those possibilities were already there in the Constitution, and I think people should just relax and realize that when we say we need to build institutions, that is really what it means, that there must be institutions in the country that can be able to live beyond individuals and must be shaped by individuals who are patriots. I'm only surprised that we found ourselves in a situation where you have a commissioner who her patriotism was divided, citizenship of more than one country, and therefore she has a place to call home. The rest of us who don't have another home, who know that Kenya is our home, must continue working hard to protect our democracy and rule of law.
Right, now you call it sensationalizing, Kipchumba Murkomen, but she makes very, very strong or gives very strong reasons as to why she's resigning. Number one, she says that the commission, in her opinion, is not prepared. What's your thoughts on that, on the commission's preparedness?
Well, you know, it is not a judgment of an individual. We are the players. We cannot... You see, let's start from the premise that the Constitution never contemplated a situation where the elections will not be, a fresh elections will not be done in 60 days. So let's start from there that an elections must be done within 60 days. Number two, that the Constitution says that election must be done by IEBC. We don't have two IEBCs, we have only one IEBC. If the Commission is not prepared, it is the decision of the Commission. There's a reason why the Commission is called a commission, not an individual commissioner. And the decision of the majority of the commission will make that calling. But even then, even where the commission says they are prepared, the ultimate judge as to whether or not they will hold the free, fair, and credible elections is not themselves. It will be the ultimate decision that the court will say. We have had situations where even the error of the court, even where the court makes a mistake or makes perfect observations, it will be the court to ultimately say, was it fair and free elections or not?
Right, and well, looking at where we are today, what would you say, first of all, is the way forward? And secondly, does it worry you that from a commissioner, as much as you say it's a commission, yes, but this is an individual, of course, who is privy to information that the public does not have, is an individual who has a lot of, who is working within the commission. When she says the commission is not prepared, shouldn't that be a time for us to pause, even if not stop, pause and ask, why does she say that?
There is no time for us to pause because we know the reason why the commissioner ran away. She gives many, some of the reasons are credible. I mean, if, for example, if someone says, I feared for my life, there is nothing to substitute fear. Fear is fear. If someone feared for life, I mean, really, there is nothing that could have protected that fear. But my greatest concern is that we are creating a very terrible precedent in the Republic of Kenya where you intimidate IEBC commissioners, you intimidate staff, you intimidate everybody and tell them that in my region, my tribe is not going to vote, my political party is not going to vote, you are not allowed to conduct elections in this area. That precedent is dangerous, Michael. Let me tell you why. Because going forward, now something new is being played in the public. If we don't have these elections, we are going to have a problem in the country where we will not have elections at all. Because it will then be in future, nothing stops anyone in 2022, for example, not just the fresh election, even before the first elections, to wait for 3 weeks to elections or 1 month to elections, announce that IEBC not prepared, prepare his own tribe, prepare his own militia, create a place of chaos, and say elections will not be held. Now, I am asking myself, what is the substitute of the Constitution? The Constitution itself says that elections must be held in 60 days. Even if we pause now and say, okay, let's pause, discuss, have debate, dialogue, so that we do what? And yet the elections must be done by 31st of October.
Senator, are you confident that the commission is ready? Because one of the things that Commissioner Akombe mentions as a problem is not the commission per se, but it is a political problem. It's something that needs to be resolved politically.
Well, I am confident that we have a constitution that works. I am confident that that constitution already provides a roadmap on who does what. Even where my confidence, even if I wasn't sure or confident about IEBC, I am not allowed to postulate a situation where they will not do the job, because failure to do that job is actually a failure of a constitutional responsibility, and there's no substitute to it. And if the Constitution really wanted to contemplate, they would have said, if the elections cannot happen in 60 days, then Parliament shall do this or that, or the court shall do this or that. There is a constitutional responsibility on the part of IEBC. What is happening is that there are people who are working in a very well-scripted scheme to occasion a crisis, so that then we have 26, we don't have elections. The day after, we now wake up and realize that because we didn't have elections, we have in a place uncharted waters. I would prefer that we have an election on 26. Even if it doesn't meet the necessary threshold, let one challenge that election in a court of law. Let us go through what Constitution contemplated, than to have a situation where we are saying we will not have elections. So that forever in the country in future, we'll be having a situation where you can't be sure even constitutional timelines and constitutional responsibility will ever be accomplished.
The Supreme Court gave a ruling and they said that the elections must be held within 60 days. However, there's a condition that they must be as per the Constitution and as per the law. Are you saying that we would rather have the elections on the 26th, regardless of the fact that they may not meet that legal and constitutional threshold? You've just said that regardless of the fact they may not meet that threshold. Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that whether or not they will meet the constitutional and legal threshold, it will only be established after the fact. You cannot postulate now or imagine that the elections will not meet the Constitution or the act, the law as it is. Let us do the elections. Let's do the auditing. The court gave an insurance that if it doesn't meet the Constitution, the law, they would rather, now they are the ones who will order to say repeat the elections, which is allowed by the Constitution.
But surely, Senator...
Michael,
yeah.
Let me just say this. For me, as a citizen and as a participant in elections, to be the one who will be saying the election does not meet the threshold, let's not have it. So that then, which dates will I be setting? The only person who should be able to say that is the court, and even when we don't agree, like we did not agree last time, we have no choice but to follow because the Constitution contemplated that. But if we are going to sit down as citizens ourselves and say, oh, the elections of 26 will not meet the constitutional threshold, let us postpone it to a date that we are not provided for in the Constitution, yet there are institutions that have a responsibility to judge and audit whether the elections meet the constitutional threshold, that really will be shooting ourselves in the foot.
All right, Senator, what's your message to Kenyans right now as we continue with this political rhetoric that's going on? Some saying there's no elections on the 26th, others insisting there's the election the 26th. Mwananchi is the one who's suffering. Business is at a standstill. The economy is crippled. What is your message to the country right now?
My first message is to tell Kenyans that don't box yourself to political competition to the extent that you are engaged in violence. The thing that every Kenyan must understand is that there is no violence that will benefit common Mwananchi. It only leads to the death of a person or a common Mwananchi. Remember, even as we speak, we are in communication as politicians from both sides of the political divide. Our children go to the same school, we eat from the same places, we joke together, we stay together. Citizens of this republic must realize that even as we grapple with legal and constitutional issues, they must keep in mind that violence cannot, it doesn't harm the rich, it doesn't harm the politicians, it doesn't harm those who are in office. It arms the common mwananchi who is being misused to assist a politician to ascend to power. Number two is that there is no condition that is permanent. Solutions will always be found. It is better than when that solution will be found, Kenyans themselves, especially the common mwananchi, will be living in peace and unity as we find that solution. We can have divergent views, but no life is worth being sacrificed for any man to ascend to political office.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, one of the things that Roslyn cites as her reasons for not being in the country is her security and her life being under threat. Are you satisfied that the state has provided enough security for the commissioners to be able to do their work without interference?
Well, to the best of my knowledge and observation, the commissioners have always assured the public that the elections, Commissioner Akombe, not more than 2 days ago, assured the public that the elections is going to be free and fair. She also assured the country that they are well prepared and that they are safe. So I don't know which Akombe to believe, the one who is in New York or the one who was in Kenya. And every security situation is personal to every individual, and it must be assessed at any given time. And I think the Inspector General of the Police has a duty to protect those people. If they want more security, I would say they should be added more security, because when there are people threatening also presiding officers, returning officers, if more security needs to be increased, I believe that it will be right to increase the security of those persons. But overall, our security as a country has improved. What I find very dangerous, though, is unfortunately that Commissioner Akombe, out of deceit, really cheated the public that she was going to see printing of ballot papers, she was ready for the election, and so forth. You know, the reason why there are men and women, gallant men and women, who fought for independence of this country is because they were courageous enough to stand in the gap. And I think it's unfortunate when one runs away from that responsibility. But going forward, we must protect ourselves against appointing persons who have dual citizenship, because we need people who are ready to live and fight for the good of this country.
All right. Finally, before we let you go, Senator, your statement, and let us know if it's your personal opinion or Jubilee stance. On the 26th, are we ready for the election?
We in the Jubilee, and this is the Jubilee position, we believe that we are the players. We have been ready for the elections of 26. We believe also in the rule of law. We disagree with the decision of the Supreme Court on 1st of September, but we will obey it. And that decision says that we must have the elections as per the Constitution. And therefore, we are ready to prepare for the elections. We have no choice, actually. It's not whether or not we are ready. It's about whether or not we will obey the Constitution.
All right. Thank you very much, Senator Kipchumba Murkomen, for joining us this morning and just letting us know his thoughts regarding the Commissioner Akombe's resignation, which we received earlier on this morning, which she did from New York, as she was meant to be going to oversee the printing of ballot papers, but diverted, went to the States, United States, and issued a statement and a resignation and stating why she resigned. But let me come back to the studio, and we have a gentleman here who basically, I would like to hear your thoughts on where we are today as we wrap up this segment. Eric Oduor, on what we should be following up in the media now regarding this story. Of course, it's developing, and we're going to wait to hear what the chairman has to say. I'm sure the president may have something he's going to say. We may have NASA leader Raila Odinga also having a statement in regards to this and how we should follow this up as we wrap up.
Yeah, I think before you went on phone with Kipchumba Murkomen, I think you've asked, that's going to answer your question, that should the media also take position or maybe support any side of the political divide. And I will say that the media should be guided by the truth and the credibility. So, and right now, actually, that is what now is supposed to be guiding the media right now, to make sure that we give the information that is true and that is credible to the members of the public as we pursue this story. We should be asking more questions. Like I said before, we should be asking more questions so that these issues are very clear, so that we do not leave the public actually confused, that the public doesn't know that actually which way forward. We should be able to carry more investigations, what is happening in IEBC. We should be telling Kenyans that this is the electoral commission that you have, that is going to preside over elections. If there are divisions, let the media tell the public right now, so that the public actually know that, fine, let's just like Murkomen has said, that we should be going for election, even if it doesn't meet the threshold, then we should go back to the court. Then I think these are the issues need to be brought out early enough, so that by the time we are going to vote, the public actually is able to make informed decision.
Okay. Your closing comments.
Yes, thank you, Mike. I think several issues stand up for the ordinary mwananchi. I think Dr. Akombe's resignation has raised and pointed to specific issues that are worth probing for the media at this particular point in time. One, of course, is the preparedness of the commission to actually conduct the election on 26th of October, and what are other implications of some of the issues Dr. Akombe has raised. The other thing, and I think these will become bigger as the days progress, now that she spoke about an environment of fear, especially for the junior IEBC staff, when you're talking about the presiding officers and some of the returning officers, are they also going to come under increasing pressure, maybe to resign for fear of safety of their lives? But I think also significant is she was also very specific on specific areas or specific counties where some of these what we'd call intimidation that are happening, and I think it is worth focusing. And what are the implications in case IEBC is unable? What are the options if they are unable to conduct training and deliver material on time? The other thing, of course, is to hold politicians to account, because we have seen, and I think we're at a point, I'm not sure whether the law still applies to some individuals, where you have seen whether it is some members of parliament, they are saying things that would generally fall under the Election Offences Act. I think it is also important for the state to show that, to create that impression that things are still under control before actually we get to a point where everybody seems to be following their own script and doing what they want. But I think what is most important for Wanjiku, and I think this question is important, you have to remember, Mike, that generally, even if the country is divided, for Wanjiku, there is one Wanjiku who feels that her vote, that she cast on 8th of August, was actually stolen, and therefore it did not count. There is another Wanjiku who felt that I cast my vote on 8th of August, and the election was actually nullified, and therefore, again, my vote didn't count. And I think in terms of the responsibility of Wanjiku, knowing what is her role or responsibility of the ordinary mwananchi in the democratic space, in terms of expressing preference that this is the person who is supposed to lead me and guide me. Because one thing we are sure, if we have elections on 26th of October, there will still be a significant population that will be disgruntled and will be unhappy with the process. If we don't have elections on 26th of October, again, there will still be a significant number of people who are still. So either way, what we have is not exactly a legal crisis. It goes beyond that. It's political. And 26th will not actually solve that problem for us, whether elections happen or not. And I think it is important now we start thinking, going forward, what are we looking at post 26th of October?
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll have to wind up right there. That's Eric Oduor, Secretary General for KUJ, and Dr. Sam Kamau, who's a lecturer at Aga Khan University, Media Communication. Thank you for joining us in the newsroom this morning. And, well, doomed if you do, doomed if you don't. It's now 20 minutes after 8. And in case you're joining us now, Rosalind Akombe, the commissioner, has resigned and sent a statement earlier on this morning and gave her reasons for resigning. But at this point in time, I'd like to speak to Jack Tumwa, who's currently joining us on phone. And Jack Tumwa is a former commissioner with the Electoral Commission of Kenya, ECK. Good morning, sir, and thank you for joining us. Now, Jack, you have worked for a commission and been there when all this is happening. First of all, let's start with Akombe's resignation. Your thoughts, your comments, and what maybe would be your opening statement to that?
Well, thank you for inviting me on KTN. Akombe's resignation does not come as a surprise, sad as that may be. It seems like it was expected. The reason she gave us things that we have to seriously think about. He says the commission is divided and it is therefore not delivering. If a commission is divided as it is and we're looking forward for it to deliver elections or in the next few days, what type of elections are we going to have? Two, she says the arrangements, the preparations for the elections are inadequate, especially considering the transmission. Now, those are some of the things that really we cannot ignore. We appear like we are sweeping lots of things under the carpet. We appear to think that there is nothing wrong happening in this country. It is a very serious matter, and in my view, really we have to stop to think about it. I've just had the the Speaker said that elections may be held. Whether it is held, half of the country will think it is wrong, half of the country will accept it. My worry is not even on the election that is likely to be held on 26. My worry and concern is what is going to happen after 26. What type of Kenya are we going to have between the 26th and the 2022 when we have another election? So Akombe's resignation, surprising as it is, and take note, Akombe did not resign in this country. She left the country and made an announcement outside the country. That is frightening. She indicated that her life was in danger. Now, if Kenyans start feeling unsafe in their own country, that should send fear down the spine of most of us. So really, let's recognize that there is a problem, and my appeal to the leaders is to stop chest thumping and come down to accept that we have a problem and we have to face it as it is and find a solution.
Now, you have worked for a commission like this before, and in all fairness, there are those who are going to say that Akombe's is a personal decision. It's a personal decision she has made and does not necessarily cripple the commission per se. But how strong is her voice, do you think, and how strongly should it be taken, given that she's a commissioner and a senior one for that matter?
She is not just a senior one. If you have followed what has been happening in the commission, Akombe, to me, has been a very strong personality in that commission. And in fact, she's a personification of that commission. You may recall that during the announcement of the results, the chairman even made a confession to say Akombe always comes to help him when he's in problems. So in my view, Akombe has been a very strong personality in the commission. And I think a lot of things, given her experience in electoral matters, I tend to believe from the outside that she has been a very, very influential person in the commission. So stop dropping out as she is. In my view, she leaves a very, very weakened commission, and I'm worried that we may have an election which is shambolic.
From the chair moving forward, what is it that you'd expect, especially given, like you've mentioned, with Rosalind's resignation, she leaves a fairly weaker commission than it was before?
Well, the chair has no option the way it is, and I think the commission has no option. I want to think that they will go ahead with the election on 26th as it is. The question is, as I've said earlier, is not having the election. Is what type of election, how will it be received? What legitimacy will it carry if it takes just half of the population of this country?
And wouldn't the chair have an opportunity now to stamp his authority here by giving the way forward? When you say they don't have a choice, it sounds like they're victims. It's like they're literally a deer caught in, bright lights, can't move. Don't they have something they can say or do right now to give this country confidence in their authority as the arbiters of the election on the 26th?
They can't exert an authority because right now they don't have it. I think the past recent events have shown that the commission listens to forces outside. And you may recall that there was a perception that the commission was divided into two. There were 4 commissioners against 3 commissioners. Now, it looks like the Akombe is going out. There are 4 commissioners vis-a-vis 2 commissioners. And you see the weaknesses are the commissioners that we have. Once commissioners start listening to forces outside the commission, I've said this before we were at the KTN, that the commission should be independent and recognize the fact that it is independent and it has to run affairs as an independent. We attempted to do this when I was at the ECK until 2005, when some commissioners came in and stopped taking instructions from the plenary and therefore taking decisions from Kiwitu. Once a commission is divided, a divided house cannot make an effective decision. It cannot be seen to be in control of the events that come later on. So right now where we are sliding down the cliff, and nobody from the political side appears that is prepared to put a brake to the country's sliding. So the commission, as much as I sympathize with the chairman, is not, in my view, in a position to talk independently. Just like Akombe said, the commissioners seem to be listening to the outsiders. Their decisions are not independent decisions. Their decisions are coming from forces from outside. And that makes it very, very difficult for the chairman.
And you are in a commission that was disbanded. That's the ECK. And it looks like history tells us every time we have an election, the commission is under so much pressure, to use the words of Akombe, under siege, to a point where we have to restructure it and redo it again. What do you think is a permanent solution so that we don't have to be here yet again come 2022?
The electoral bodies are not a problem of this country. The problem of this country is the politics of this country. We are dishonest. We appear to use the commission as a scapegoat. We did that with ECK. We did that with Hassan. And I want to believe that immediately after the planned election, or whatever you may call it, of 26, this commission is going to be put out. We are actually attempting to treat cancer that is eating this country using aspirin. We have to recognize that the cancer need to be treated as cancer, but not administer aspirin to treat cancer. Unless we face the politics of this country and say there is something with our political setup of this country, we are going to have as many commissions as they come, and every other time, one party or the other will use the commission as an excuse for the mistakes which are otherwise political.
Thank you very much, Jack Tumo, for joining us this morning. And, giving us your comments and your thoughts on that developing story where the Commissioner Rose Akombe has resigned and issued a statement as to why she has resigned. And, well, he has closed with a statement that we are treating cancer in this country using aspirin in regards to the Commission. And at this point, I want to now bring in my colleague, Betty Chalo, who's going to be taking up the reins and continue bringing you this developing story as we carry on. Good morning, Betty. And, well, as I'm sure you have realized, it's been a very busy morning as we received this statement from Rosalyn Akombe, who has now resigned from New York.
Right, Michael, it is quite a shocker getting Kenyans right in the morning. And of course, just like as you've been doing, we're going to continue, of course, highlighting and focusing really on Akombe's departure from the IEBC. Like I mentioned, it has caught quite a number of Kenyans and the political class by surprise. And we'll be delving deeper, speaking to more and more legislators and leaders across the board as we, of course, seek to find just what next is going to happen. Remember, this is coming up just 7 days to the election. It's quite a historic one, and therefore we'll be delving deeper, just like Michael has been doing for the last couple of hours, to really understand what the implications of this departure are, and of course, just how we move forward. We are yet to hear anything from the IEBC. Obviously, it's a bit early, but hopefully, as the day progresses on, we'll be getting to hear all those reactions, hopefully also from the IEBC and their stance on Akombe's departure. Thank you very much, Michael. I will now let you get a breather as I continue here on the show to continue bringing the latest details to our viewers. And